Today I've got two brand new custom Magic cards to share with you. And they're basically the same card, they're just in different colors. I could have made the card like a 5-color thing and you can do whatever you want, or I could have given it like a before the game choose a color effect, but neither of those felt correct. Instead I have two different themes of the same concept, and each of them is 3 colors so that we've covered all 5 colors across them. Not every color combination, but all 5 colors. The basic concept is that I wanted a commander that lets you basically nominate a non-legendary creature as your commander, right? What I was thinking was something like Rocco. If you know Rocco, when you play them, you name X and you go and you search your library for a card with X mana value, throw it into the battlefield. This allows you to have kind of any creature you want as your commander without it having to be your commander. Maybe it only has, maybe it's monocolored and you want to have 3 colors in your deck, so Rocco is letting you play 3 colors and then you're able to search up this monocolored legendary creature. Or maybe it's not legendary, right? It's a very cool design for a commander. But my problem with Rocco, not only is it only 3 colors, so you can only do that with certain cards, but also it doesn't feel like a Rocco deck anymore. Now it just feels like a whatever you tutored up deck. What I decided was Fidget Dollmaker would go searching for a creature, and they would throw it onto the battlefield, but when it enters, it turns into a doll. It becomes just an artifact. It's no longer a creature. It doesn't have stats, can't attack, all that good stuff. Now, if you really want to, you can still, like, flicker it or something, and then, haha, it's back, and it's a full version of itself. So if you really wanted to play like something that attacks and buffs itself as your doll commander, you have that opportunity, but you have to jump through some extra hoops, and I'm totally okay with that. Instead, the idea was that it really is effectively a second commander in that I wanted Fidget to be able to search your library, your hand, your graveyard, or even exile. The original version had it enter as a choose one effect, and you either returned everything from exile with the chosen name, or you searched your library, graveyard, and hand. By the chosen name, what I mean is that the original version of the card had this idea of naming a card before the game begins. And I think I got it to a place where it was worded correctly. It was just such a complicated, elaborate effect. Like, it was worded correctly to the rules of the game, I believe, but it was a mess. It took up so much space on the card, and it wasn't worth it. So eventually I scrapped that and I said, nope, you can still search your library, your hand, or your graveyard, but you no longer can search exile. So if something gets exiled, it's gone for good. But otherwise, you can keep bringing back your commander if you have one specific card you're looking for. But you also now can be a little bit more flexible. You can have a couple of cards that you can tutor up with Fidget. Now, when Fidget dies, they do destroy all of the cards that they brought into the battlefield. Technically, even they actually destroy all your equipment, and that's something I haven't got to yet. The flavor of Fidget is that when they enter the battlefield, they find a creature, it becomes an artifact equipment, and it attaches to Fidget. I like the idea of Fidget walking around with this doll, so it becomes an equipment for them, which I thought was cute. The actual design of, like, physical design, visual design of Fidget changed dramatically. I originally thought Fidget was going to be this kind of, like, nerdy goblin girl, and no, it's this very jovial goblin gentleman. I quite like their design. They're very, like, Great Mouse Detective, the doll tinkerer person in that. I can't remember their name. I got to a pretty good spot. I'm pretty happy with, like, okay, it enters the battlefield. It lets you search these zones, not exile, though, so you can permanently remove the thing. So it's not exactly like a real commander. And when it enters, it becomes this artifact, so you can only do certain things with it. Then I started working on the counterpart in the other colors. This would be Bream Cursecrafter. At first, Bream Cursecrafter was black, green, and red. The idea was that both goblins would be red because they're goblins, and then each one would have the other 2 colors to cover all 5 across 2 creatures. At the very end, I changed Bream to black, green, blue because I just really wanted to get those Simic colors in there. I really wanted to get Dimir in there. I felt like those were much more like witchy, cursing colors. And, like, it's not like every goblin is red, right? There are mono black goblins. It's fine. It does feel a little bit weird because green and red is the most common dual color combination, and neither of these two are green and red. Feels a bit weird, but I think it still works better. Gruul just doesn't feel either artifact-y or curse-y to me. When I look at 3 color combinations, I usually like to think about what are the themes of the 2 color combinations that make up the 3 color whole. So it's exactly the same, except instead of finding a card and turning it into an artifact, it turns it into an enchantment. Specifically, an enchantment or a curse, and it enchants a target player. Now, for a while, I was playing with the idea of like, okay, can we have it say the curse now reads, instead of you, it says enchanted player. And I played around with this idea of a lot, being like, can I make that make sense? And I realized a bunch of reasons why it doesn't work. Partially just because the grammar breaks if you replace you with enchanted player in some certain circumstances. But also because your aren't being replaced. So there was one version of Bream where it said, like, when it enters the battlefield, you find this creature, it becomes an enchantment or a curse, attach it to target player, or replace all instances of you, your, and your with enchanted player, enchanted players, enchanted players. And it was just, or enchanted player is, that's what it was. And it was just such a mess. And eventually I realized, wait a minute, you refers to me, the person who controls the card. What if I just add a line of text that says, you may have that player gain control? And what this means is, yeah, now, if you want, you can say, I have this card with a downside, I'm going to turn it into a curse and attach it to my opponent, and now they control it. Instead of it being just changing the wording so it affects the enchanted player, it affects the enchanted player because they control it now. So they are you in that sentence. Really happy with that fix. Where this leads us to is, well, why not do that with Fidget? So Fidget also now has that effect. So again, they are very much exactly the same. I could have made, like, Bream has a different flavor because they're the only one that can actually curse their opponent with the thing. I could have done that, but I don't know, it's a little doll. Maybe you're affecting your opponent via this, like, voodoo doll kind of thing. Not that they're like a voodoo dollist. I made them an artificer. The idea being sort of like clockwork dolls, do you know what I mean? Even though the art doesn't depict a clockwork doll, it depicts just like a normal stuffed doll, but whatever. Originally, I had a whole thing with, like, when they die, sacrifice all of the equipment attached to Fidget, or sacrifice all of the curses that you own, or something like that. And I realized that the problem is, if you give control of it to your opponent, you no longer are allowed to sacrifice it. So there was a version that said, like, gain control of them and then sacrifice them, and it's like, just destroy them. You know, just destroy it, it's fine. Yes, sacrifice gets around indestructible, but I kept finding these, like, little corner cases in the rules of, like, oh, but if I word it that way, you could do this. Or if I word it this way, you could do that. And I got to the point where I realized, that's fine. Like, let players do their janky combos. If they're like, wait a minute, if I make it indestructible, then I can't destroy it. Haha! Like, yeah, if you want to jump through the hoops, have at it. It's fine. The only thing I really want to avoid is you being able to, like, phage your opponent. So I did have to make sure the wording was meticulous with when it enters the battlefield, it becomes, and it can change the ownership. Originally it said if it entered the battlefield this way, and I'm pretty sure that wording means that it happens on the stack before it hits the battlefield, and therefore you could have, like, killed someone with a phage, which is not the intent. I ran these cards by some of my friends, and there was this sentiment of, like, hey, I think these are kind of weak. And I was like, oh, good. I was worried they were too strong. I want them to be weak. I want them to be kind of jank. You know what I mean? Like, if they're too good, then it's less fun to do a cool, interesting, janky build. Then it's just a really powerful card. I remember one time wanting to play, like, Beamtown Bullies, and my girlfriend was like, you know that card is, like, super strong, right? I'm like, well, that's no fun. I don't want to play a super strong card. I want to play something janky. So I mean, that's my personal preference when it comes to Commander. Also, they are worded in ways that you can play these in not Commander. Like, you totally don't have to play them in Commander, which was intentional. I think they'd be fun outside of Commander. After I hammered out the designs and got the wording to as accurate as possible and within the right space, again, I did a lot of changes to make it fit the text box in a way that felt efficient. I just started working on the art. So as we've already seen, Fidget, very much inspired by this like clockwork tinkerer, big mustache, and just like having a great time. Originally, I really wanted to do a full scene with like a bunch of different good, like iconic creatures that would make good targets, just like as dolls in the background of the shot, but that's beyond me, honestly. I know my range as an artist, and while it is good to push yourself, I wasn't going to do it for this project. With Bream, same idea. I really did want to capture that, like, little goblin mischief maker energy, so she is just, like, a little thing, and she doesn't have, like, the curse is very vague. It's just like a shape. It's anomalous. It's ephemeral, and I think that's fine. I think it looks really good despite it just being like a swirl of colors. I don't know what plane they'd be from. Probably these would exist in a new plane that would just be my creations. So I think I'm gonna try not worry too much about like, yes, this goblin's from Ravnica and this goblin is from Ixalan or whatever. That's not the case. Neither of these fit the aesthetics of either of those planes. So I'm happy for it to be my own plane, which we're developing as we go. This is cards 2 and 3 of my set that I'm making slowly over time. DBC, I don't think I'm going to make a full set, but I numbered these when I used mtg.design to render the cards. And don't they look good? I really am happy with MTG Design. These are the final designs. Fidget Dollmaker is a 5-mana blue, red, and white 4/4 legendary creature Goblin Artificer. When Fidget Dollmaker enters the battlefield, search your hand, library, and/or graveyard for a creature card with mana value 5 or less. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle. When a creature enters the battlefield this way, it becomes an equipment artifact. Attach it to Fidget Dollmaker. You may have target player gain control of it. When Fidget Dollmaker dies, destroy all equipment attached to it. Bream Cursecrafter is a 5-mana black, green, and blue 4/4 legendary creature Goblin Shaman. When Bream Cursecrafter enters the battlefield, search your hand, library, and/or graveyard for a creature card with mana value 5 or less. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle. When a creature enters the battlefield this way, it becomes an Aura Curse enchantment with Enchant Player. Attach it to target player. You may have that player gain control of it. When Bream Cursecrafter dies, destroy all curses you own.